training has certainly benefited us. But yeah, you just you know in your heart, and here again, I think it's just a matter of trust. It's a matter of relational equity over the years, and I know of some pastors who transition, and have only, the pastoral search committee goes out and they don't even know each other very well, and no, but ours is different, and not that that doesn't work, it does, but this is different. We had relational equity. He would have been Sharon and I's son if something would have happened to his mom and dad. I mean, that was in writing, a legal document. So he lived two houses behind us when we first bought our house, and his family moved behind us, and so just a close relationship. His mom and dad were saved underneath my mother and father's ministry, and they were first generation Christians. And my dad won his mom to the Lord in a pool hall and shooting pool. And for those of you that you know, uh, don't let religion get in the way of winning souls.
That was when shooting pool was a sin.
Yeah, because shooting pool was a sin.
So glad God changed his
So
mind on
he,
that day.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, praise God.
Well, in some ways, you make it sound so easy because you have all that relational equity, but we know that doesn't happen on its own or happen overnight. And yet, despite having that closeness, you mentioned in the video that you still brought in a third party to help coach you through it. Can you tell us a little bit about that
Uh,
process?
David Robinson has been our coaching pastor for when I was lead pastor, a number of years before this transition took place. Uh, Coach David had worked with, I'm not sure if Ken Harbaum's in here or not, but and Brother Rothwell. Are either one of them in here? Brother Rothwell, back there, wave everybody. Brother Rothwell, he could be up here on this stand doing a better job than I am. But Brother Rothwell and Ken had a transition similar to ours, and they were kind of the model to begin with. And Coach David, I think, worked with them in their transition. And so he had been coaching our staff and coaching our church and coming in once or twice a year. And so we just utilized the example that was set before us. So thank you, Brother Rothwell, for pioneering this process. I'm serious. I mean, they did this before we did. So don't think we're the first one. So anyway.
You said that there's no formula for this. Every transition is different. And yet you did have a plan.
Yeah.
You said 3 years and in some ways 5 years. Can both of you share a little bit about how that plan coalesced and why you took so long? Because some people have 6 months, some people have a year, but you settled on a number. How did you arrive at that?
Well, I think one thing is that, I'm still young myself. So come on, somebody. I can shave my head and you'll never know it. Uh, um, but seriously, it wasn't a panic mode. We didn't have to. Here again, as Pastor Daniel said, we weren't in, we weren't in any kind of crisis. I mean, church is always in some kind of crisis, but it wasn't a, we didn't, it wasn't a have to. It was, we didn't have, we weren't panicking about it. Um, and when God spoke to me, and here again, that's the key. You do this when God speaks to you as the lead, as the one who's passing the baton. You don't pass the baton too early and you don't pass it too late. You got to pass it in the passing zone. And but God began to deal with my heart and speak to me about passing the baton. And so when that happens, and then it happens over and over, you listen and you obey. So I think the key to it is just hearing from God and the timing of it. So,
Awesome. Daniel, anything to add?
Um, no, not a whole lot other than Coach David Robinson, who's been a mentor of mine since Pastor Steve brought him on as um, the coaching pastor. We're wired pretty similarly. He's just an older, more mature version of me who's helped me not do dumb things out of impatience and lack of peace. But he stressed that it would take a good 5 years for the transition to happen. And he told me over and over, he told us both, he'd say, Daniel, the transition's not going to happen fast enough for you. And he told Pastor Steve, it's not going to move slow enough for you. And there were a lot of, there were a lot of interesting borderline, even with all the history that we have and the trust, borderline awkward conversations. And during that time, and it was really,
For example,
just some of, his father founded the church. Some of the wishes that he has for how the church would move forward, just being able to get those things out. I mean, you're not going to just barge into the guy that you're transitioned to his office and say, hey, listen, we better always speak in tongues in this church. That's just strange. But when David Robinson would come, he would always say, I don't have any skin in the game. He's like, is there anything that you want to tell Dan? I mean, it was just good to have a guide to stress the things that he hoped that we would always have as a part of our DNA, but yet still put me in the position to actually lead and not be this puppeted leader. And so, it took a long time there were times actually, now that I'm thinking about it, where he did come in my office and he was like, hey, I've been thinking about something. But without David Robinson coming every year, I don't know that we would have had all the conversations that we had. What would it look like for him? Because all of my younger pastor buddies are like, bro, he's staying? I'm like, yeah. Man, that's bad news. I'm like, why is that bad news? It ain't gonna work. And I'm like, it ain't gonna work with your pastor. Like, cause you ain't known him as long as this guy's like my dad. When they walked out of the fellowship hall of their wedding, I happened to be standing there and they knocked me over.
And he cried. And Sharon
Oh,
stopped us going to our honeymoon.
You're
and
taking
picked
my
him up.
punchline right now. She picked me up, and I got a kiss on the cheek before they got on their honeymoon.
That is a true story.
He was there when my grandfather died. He was in the emergency room before I got there when my grandfather died. He was, it's impossible to recount everything that both of them. I used to sit in their living room when I was a little kid and eat SpaghettiOs and watch Chips. Officer Baker and Ponzi, anybody with me there? Yeah, I can relate to the older crowd too. That was a joke. Never mind. I'm moving along. But I think the timing was important because it gave us time. Because you know how you make a decision sometimes and then the next day you regret it? No, seriously.
oftentimes with food.
And purchases. Yeah. But you get a chance to like flesh out how you feel. It gave the church time to respond. And I think the time was like, and it didn't move fast enough. But now looking back, it's like this has almost been 3 years now.
Almost been 3 years, yeah.
And it feels like it was yesterday. So
That's amazing. And Steve, you're still on staff. You're still a presence at the church.
Some.
And I just got to point out that in the leadership world, that's unusual, right?
Yes, sir.
When a CEO retires from a company,
Yeah.
he doesn't keep the corner office.
Yeah.
Right. The new guy comes in. There's a certain amount of handoff that happens, and you don't want to make things awkward. But you're showing us that it is possible. It's not like retirement means you're kicked off the premises and
No.
your badge is deactivated.
Yeah, they did downsize my office. They
you
did.
said, guys, I know we need the extra room. It was your suggestion.
They took my jacuzzi out. I can't believe
Oh
it.
my goodness.
But how do you guys navigate that? I mean, Daniel, in your case, I mean, it's kind of there must be some amount of awkwardness of having the guy that they're used to talking just down the hall. Like, how does that work?
I'm telling you, we can get up here and we can try to paint this insta version of what this was like. But it was over such a long period of time that it wasn't like that. There wasn't this day where I woke up and I'm like, okay, well now I'm the lead pastor. It was so slow and so, I mean, I was running our staff meetings for years before we even talked about the transition. So we can try to give you guys some like polished book version of what it looked like. But Brother Rothwell, you know that's not what it's like. David Robinson constantly referenced you and Brother Harbaum's transition the entire time.
And Brother Rothwell's still there
Yeah.
too. So if he could still be there, I could still be at Bethel.
We're not trying to make you leave. But it was so, yeah, I mean, it's the way discipleship is supposed to be. You don't
beautiful.
wake up one morning and you're like, okay, I'm gonna give you 3 points to being a pastor. I mean, I went to funerals with him. I watched him do weddings. I held one of his children when their house burned down and watched. It was Pastor Blake. We sat on my parents' couch. I was a teenager and we sat there, and I mean, we've just done so much life together. I'll start crying, but so I'm gonna stop.
It's really beautiful, and thank you for modeling that for all of us. Not everyone is in this position. I'm sure there's people, maybe even in this room right now, who feel that it's time to begin a transition, but they don't have a Daniel, or there isn't an obvious person. What advice would you have to someone in that position?
Well, I guess hearing from God, I mean, we should all have uh, the 12. I remember several years ago, way before this. I mean, this was probably in my 40s. That's been a long time ago. But I remember the Lord speaking to me and saying, I don't, and even it was confirmed by Lee Grady when June and Gene introduced us to Lee back in Orlando years ago. We had lunch together, and he spoke over our church because the Lord just dealt with me and said, I don't want you to have a successor. I want you to have successors. And I want you to raise up more than one that could step into your shoes. And honestly, Pastor Daniel was the one, but we have more than Pastor Daniel. I mean, we've got a staff of young men and women who can, I mean, they can get the job done. And so I just feel like that as ministers and pastors, we should all have our Elishas in the wings. We should all have our Timothys and our Eunices and Loises and Esther's in the wings of our ministry that we're raising up, that we're pouring into, that more than delegation, we're empowering them with, like you said, it was a long leash, but I still had him on a leash. And so honestly, I mean, we do need to still, have that, accountability and so forth. But yeah, having successors. I would just say as a pastor, a leader in your ministry, uh, making sure you have someone or you have several someones who can take your place. And when you're gone, never miss a beat. And be okay with them even being better than you. Be okay with them going beyond where you've been before. Be okay. Don't I tell you what you've got we and I struggle with it and I have struggled with it and I've been honest with Pastor Daniel and the staff struggling with it. But you have to get over insecurity. You have to get delivered from insecurity. And because if you don't, you're going to cling to something until you choke it to death. And you've got to be secure enough in your identity in Christ, not your identity in your position or your title. And so, as ministers, we've got to we got to follow the Jesus model. And he had a team around him. He had a team of men and women who stepped up, got full of the Holy Spirit, baptized in the Holy Ghost, and went out and changed the world. And there was more than one. So yeah, that's my spiel.
What would you say to someone who cannot imagine life or ministry without being the person in charge? What would you say to someone who has no intention to retire, just can't fathom that?
Okay, you have to focus beyond the exchange zone. You got to focus beyond passing the baton. You got to focus on what's on the other side, what you're transitioning to. And you know, all of us are called, and we know when we're called, it's a lifetime calling. Like he said last night, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle, and it's a calling, a lifestyle calling. So, but in that calling, there's transitions that take place. You know, there was a time when I was my dad's associate for 10 years. I served as his associate pastor, and you know, everything else. Choir director, music director, youth pastor, janitor. We did it all.
Water fountain repair guy,
Yeah.
soldering expert on
yeah,
site.
all of it. And, you know, but there, you just be faithful in what God's called you to. And, but your calling is going to still be there. And your giftings are going to still be there. But God just shifts you to another an addition to what you've been doing, actually, an increase. I see it as a promotion.
Love that. I love that. It's not the end, it's the beginning, like you said in the video. Daniel, question for you. Having this modeled by your mentor, how has that affected or changed the way you lead? How old are you now?
39.
39. So you got some career ahead of you. How has this process changed the way that you lead and as you look at the future of your career?
Well, I would say that combined with just our take on the role of church leaders, which is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry, not to constantly be doing all the ministry yourself and then inviting the congregation to come and support you. All of that has been a big part of our DNA for a long time now. And I'd say that now, as I stand up and I address our church, I'm addressing a room full of ministers, not congregants or lay people. They're all ministers of reconciliation. So I'd see my role more of taking what he has done with me and some of the people that I grew up with and my contemporaries, and now saying those same things to our entire congregation. And on October the 25th, we're going to be doing Vision Sunday. And the way the Lord has really told me is that he's given me some general directions, but the specificities of the vision are going to come from the people in the seats. And God has given them dreams. He's given them careers. They don't go to cut hair Monday through Friday and then come and do ministry on Sunday. They're doing ministry every day of the week. And so I really just feel like the way this has happened, I just feel compelled to do the same thing for every single person that calls Bethel home. Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, please write them down, raise your hand, we'll get them answered. I see a couple hands here and there. Pastor Steve, this process has gone very well, so I'm not asking you to be too introspective, but if you could do anything over again or give advice to an earlier version of yourself, what would you do? What would you change? I've stumped him.
Wow, yeah. I mean, it's gone so wonderfully. You just really have to prepare your heart. You really have to prepare your attitude. You have to, keep your spirit in check, your ego in check. I would say, it's like we tell God to drive. We give him the steering wheel. We tell him to drive, but we're sitting in the passenger seat and we reach over and grab back the steering wheel again, and try to steer it where we want it to go. And so that happens, um, and you've been the main decision maker, and then then you're not, and you're an influencer, but you're not making the final decisions. You got to adjust to that. You got to be comfortable with that. Even though I'm still most of the time I'm there, because I transitioned to global leadership pastor of our church. Let me establish that. And so I'm overseeing all of our missions works. And as you saw, the delegation from the Dominican Republic here last night, I'm not sure if they're here this morning. Oh, there they are, Pastor Ellie and our Dominican family. And so we've been pouring a lot of time in there. Sharon and myself, we've been twice this year. And so I think, just preparing your heart, I would say that is an ongoing process. I'm not sure that I do anything different, but I will say that the more you can prepare your heart for your new role, your new opportunities, the more you know. I think comfortable you'll be with the actual transition, and being okay with not being the final decision maker anymore. But what's cool about it is this Sunday I went to Exalt Church, Pastor Sean Hudson and Randy Estelle's church that he planted here in Bradenton years ago. Sharon and I and Phil Carey went this past Sunday, and Michael Britt and his wife, and we were sitting there, and of course they're at home having church, and so we have a group staff text, and so my phone starts going off while I'm sitting in the service, and I think our children's pastor Philip Sexton, wave at everybody, Pastor Phillips, our family pastor, and I think it was he that posted and said, it's 79 degrees in the children's building. The air conditioning's not working. And I just dropped my phone and said, not my problem. That was good, man. I like that. There is so many good things about it. And that's one of them. That's not my problem, And honestly, what's been so cool about it is it's like, God gave us a vision to build a ministry center in Dominican Republic. And I went to Pastor Ken Harbaum's missions conference, and there was a brother there who was raising money to plant a church in Malaysia, I think it was. And so the Lord spoke to me while I was there. I think I shared this in a conference back, but the Lord spoke to me and said, give $1,000 to that brother to help him plant his church. And so contacted Pastor Dan. I said, is it okay if we give $1,000 to? And I already had a green light, but I still try to run things through the channels. And so we did. We gave it. I came home, and I presented to our church that next Sunday. I presented to our church about our vision for building in Dominican Republic. And one businessman walked up to me after the service, and he said, I want to give $40,000 towards that project. And he said, I want to challenge the church. I want to make it a matching challenge of 40,000. He said, but here, I want to tell you this, even if the church doesn't match it, he said, I'm still going to give it. And that happened right after that. And it was like, and that was, not long after our transition. And God just really just stamped on it. And when you're in God's timing with what you're doing, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle at times with that decision making, with the things that you've been comfortable with doing, but you're going to also see God just do miracles in front of you for your obedience to where you're at this time in your season of your ministry.
Amen.
I just talk too much. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Daniel, question for you. How is your family involved in this whole process? I mean, it's not just you, it's your wife, it's your kids. You guys minister as a team. And were there any special efforts you took in this maybe I should just ask, how did your wife take the news when you guys decided to go that direction?
She was just like, yeah.
Hallelujah.
It was, I mean, we've always been involved in ministry as a family. We do a lot of things together, so it was
But it's a
never.
transition for them as well, right? Going from the family of a staff pastor to the senior leader.
Guys, was it a big change for y'all?
They're sitting on the front row.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I don't. It was such a long period of time that there were no just abrupt turns. And Pastor Steve had done a lot of the hard culture shifts that it does come better when the older generation does it.
For example,
For example, being okay with allowing our worship leaders to sing the songs that, as long as they were biblically correct and uplifting, to sing the songs in the style of music that they want to even be okay with allowing different styles of dress and clothing as long as it was done in modesty. Creating a culture where the pastor was not the superhero, that everybody had his cell phone number and he felt like he was going to pull his hair out because people called him when their big toe was hurting at 2 o'clock in the morning. To the point of like, he created a culture where people, I'll be very honest with you. I mean, I'm sure they have a little bit of pressure being my kid, but people don't mess with my kids. I know some of you have horror stories about your kids and the way church members treated them, but I don't have that issue. And a lot of it has to do with because Pastor Steve created a culture in the church where people learn to respect and honor people that were leaders other than the lead pastor and their families. And honestly, when I walked into it, the church had already full blown transitioned into 2023.
awesome.
So my family, they've been a part of that. We've been there for, 39 years now. So, yep.
Switching gears back to you, Stephen, especially in the early part of this transition, what were some of the things that were, I hate to use the word hard, but maybe difficult or precious to give up? What were the things that maybe you were not looking forward to having off your plate or out of your purview?
Well, I love to preach, so I think it was that was probably the biggest thing, was and I mean honestly, our church we have 3 services. I mean that is incredible, and to be able to preach to 3 different congregations, people being saved, and that I just didn't that's the fulfillment of the calling. And that shifts to doing that in other places where you've been comfortable right there at home, and you've seen the life change that has taken place there. So I think that was probably the hardest thing, in terms of not having the consistent preaching schedule. And Pastor Daniel certainly incorporates me into the preaching schedule, and so I still preach at Bethel, and I appreciate every opportunity that they give. But when you go from doing it every Sunday for 52 weeks, and then you're stepping down, that is. But we did it in such a long period of time that it made it comfortable, made it easier. It was challenging, sharing it with the family. Sharon, I think, I'm a changed person. I like change. She's less of a change person, and she's always steady. But she said, Steve, if God's spoken to you and you've heard from the Lord, then I'm behind it. Rich and Blake and Matt, they were all supportive behind it. Blake, being worship pastor, was very supportive. And he said, "Yeah," he said, "Dad," he said, "Daniel is the man." And so we, the family, of course, we're like family, so we're very close knit.
Daniel, just I'm curious, short answer here. At what stage in your career, how old were you when you felt the call to a senior pastoral role?
Um,
Were you in your 20s, your
I don't.
teens, 30s?
His children will tell you, his physical children, that I'm really bad with dates and directions. Really bad. They remind me a lot. Um, I I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry not to give y'all specific
it's
answers.
okay.
I don't have these like super definitive moments like some people have.
Well,
I
let me
was
ask.
just there. I was faithful. I think I honored him. He raised me up, and boom, it happened. He gave me a lot of opportunities to do things, and I just did them and was open to anything he had to say about it. And then it happened. I don't think I woke up one day and was just like, oh, today is the day I'm being called to be a pastor. It just seemed kind of natural, I guess.
So let me ask a little bit of a difficult follow-up question.
It's okay.
What you said was beautiful.
Sure.
What you said was very honoring.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is in your stage of life or career,
Mm-hmm.
who feels that calling,
Mm-hmm.
but the job isn't available?
The job isn't available.
There isn't a natural, like, yeah, one day I'll be in that role. They've hit their ceiling.
At the church that they're at.
What advice would you have?
I give them a couple thoughts. The first one is this: you're either being called to be sent out or you're being called to stay, but you're not being called to stay and be negative and not support the leader's vision. There's not a third option. So you either need to go talk to your pastor and say, I feel like I'm being called to be sent out. What do you think of this? Not, this is what I'm doing. But there's never, God doesn't call us to stay and be divisive.
Right, right.
And so the second thing I would tell them is to go read Acts 16:3. Interesting verse where Paul tells Timothy, I'm going to circumcise you. Because the place
He's a grown man.
Because the place that we're going is not going to receive you if you're not circumcised. Now, I don't know what they did. Did they flash people before they preached to them? I don't know. I've still been doing some digging, y'all, to try to figure out, like, I don't understand what happened there, but I will say this. I know that it seems, sorry, that preacher last night, he just got in me, y'all. Is he here? He's a little risque, but I enjoyed it. But no, seriously, you have to really stop and just think for a moment. Of course, we know you guys, you've got commentaries. You can do the digging yourself and understand the significance, what it means. I get it. But the point is, homeboy still had to get circumcised by his spiritual father. Right. And it took a lot of trust. And I'm sure at some point in the process, he was like, you sure this is what we're supposed to be doing? You positive I got to do this? I can preach with it. Just as I can without it. So I think you really have to trust each other. And for those of you who have been older ministers who maybe were told, be careful when someone pats you on the back because they're just looking for a place to put the knife. And some of you younger ones who are like, you can't trust the older generation. They're never going to give it up. Da, 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 da. I mean, I guess I would just say to you, like, what's the alternative? What you've pumped into for 50 or 60 years just dies with your funeral? Or to the younger generation, you just walk around as a profligate prodigal with no spiritual covering. If you're waiting for someone, younger generation, to submit to that's perfect, you're going to have to wait till you get to heaven. And you have to trust. I mean, in any relationship that we have in this life, you have to trust people and understand, like the preacher said last night, that real love is being able to love in the face of offense. This man has offended me many times. And I have offended him 10 times as many times as he has offended me. Seriously. And it's just a choice to love each other and trust each other. So I'd say if that's what you're being called to and the spot's not open, you might want to check your hearing and make sure that's what you're being called to, or go and just have an honest conversation and say, I feel like I'm being called out. What do you think?
It's wisdom right
Amen.
there. Well, we're wrapping up our time here. We've answered several questions from the audience, but I know that there's more. And so fortunately, we have another day and a half of this conference, and we have a lot of time to be able to invest in each other. And these guys right here have a lot to share. There's also people out in the crowd right now who have a lot to share on this topic. So if any of this is relevant to you and your ministry, take the time to ask questions. There are resources available both with these guys and others in the fellowship. And even if it doesn't happen at this conference, we have resources available. So don't feel like you're alone or isolated. There are hundreds of other ministers in our fellowship who are going through exactly what you're going through right now at whatever place in your career cycle you're at. And so as we wrap up, is there anything you would like to add?
If you've transitioned your ministry, if you've transitioned it, would you stand? I know we've got several in here who have. Please stand if you've transitioned. Brother Rothwell. Wow. Look around, and if you want someone to talk to get some guidance, to get some counsel, to hear different ways of transitioning, go see these guys and these ladies. Go talk to them. And just get information, share with them. That's what we did. And I would just encourage you to utilize these spiritual moms and dads that we have. Aren't we blessed in the fellowship to be an intergenerational fellowship? Amen.
I would just stress that if you're looking for someone perfect to transition your ministry to, or if you're looking for someone, I said it already, if you're looking for someone perfect to submit yourself to, you're going to die looking. And perfection is oftentimes one of the biggest enemies of progress. You are not going to find somebody without flaw. So from both sides, it's like we said, I've been to his house when my wife and I got in a really big argument, and I was not really nice. I was a jerk. Said a lot of things I shouldn't have said, and the next thing I know, I'm in their living room and I'm saying, hey, look, this just happened. I also got in an argument with my father-in-law. It didn't go real good either, and I just needed to tell y'all this is where I'm at. And it was just like, we love you. Anything else we need to know? and so you're not gonna find someone perfect. I don't know how to stress that enough. Yeah. Yep.
Let's give both of them a round of applause.
Thank you, Adam.
So if you haven't already, pull out your fellowship bingo card. Every one of these squares represents a connection that you can make and glean something from. In fact, let's see. You've been a senior leader for less than 5 years? Okay, can you sign my card?
For a donation of $5 to the Dominican
Take the time to get to
Republic
know each
Mission
other.
Center, I will sign your card. First
Take the time
generation
to
preacher
get to
too.
know each other. We are actually about to head into our equipping session. So for those of you who don't know, we have 8 different presenters who are going to do these roundtable discussions on a whole litany of topics. We've got 2 rounds of 4 each. So you have 2 chances to pick the topics. They don't repeat. We're not presenting twice. And to help you to know that list, we got a quick little video.
Hi, my name is Josh, and this is my wife, Karen, and we're looking forward to talking with you about church administration and finances and what it takes to run a healthy church ministry. We'll see you soon.
Hi, my name is Michael Britt. My wife, Christy, and I will be teaching on youth and family ministry. Feel free to come by and join us as we talk about setting culture for the future.
Hello, my name is Jason Benedict, and I believe that God's solution for much of the brokenness that's in our communities is sitting in the pews of our churches. And we can learn how to affirm, equip, and empower marketplace world changers to bring transformation. We're going to talk about how to do that.
Hey, this is Adam Ratliff. We're going to be talking about media ministry, things like websites, marketing, branding, church online. What are the tools that you need to move your ministry forward?
Hi, I'm Matt Hoffman of Frontlight Technology. Imagine, if you will, the frantic phone call as one of your members calls in just sheer panic that their confidential information was released. And not just released, but released by you. Join us in the Inside the Hacker's Mind breakout session, where we'll dive into all that you need to know, and every attendee will receive a cybersecurity toolkit to begin protecting their ministry right away. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Hey everybody, it's Blake, and I'm so excited to be doing a breakout session on worship, and we're going to talk about worship, so come on.
Hey, my name is Gage. I am running audio here at the conference, and we are going to be doing a workshop, more like a group discussion on production and audio. So any questions you have, it's going to be really a big roundtable discussion. I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, Jameson Davis with Guardian Wealth Management. We are so excited to be here rolling out the Fellowship Network's retirement plan. We're also going to talk about if you are in vocational ministry, if you're a missionary or pastor, how you should get paid while you're working, how you should get paid while you're retired. We'll talk about that, and also give away 5 of these Yeti coolers. So sign up at the booth, and we'll see you there.
All right, we've got great subject matter experts who are here to answer questions. They're going to present for about 15 or so minutes, and then it's going to be Q&A. So if you have questions for your ministry relevant to any of those subjects, pick a session and enjoy your time. If you open up the mobile guide on your phone, you all received an email this morning that tells you where the room assignments are. I can tell you right now, some are on this level and some are on the level above us. So the main lobby and the lower lobby. The first sessions start at 10:30. So we got about 10 or 13 minutes or so, and we'll see you guys in the breakouts. Thank you.